Hello, what's it like driving a Tesla in Portugal? Are there enough Tesla superchargers? And what are the alternatives to charging up your EV? Please stick around for the good, the bad and the ugly. And as always, I like to do the cost of the trip per mile and also the real world range of my Tesla Model 3 wherever I go. After about 5 days in Porto, we drove down to Faro area of Algarve, about 340 miles. And if you look at our first video, you can see what happened when we drove from Cornwall to Portsmouth and then from Santander down to Porto on the west coast of Portugal, and it's the second biggest city in Portugal. Now, I hadn't driven for 6 days and it was good walking and discovering Porto on foot. Not driving for a few days was kind of nice, and we're in the centre, so it was quite convenient. The Airbnb in Porto didn't let me charge, although I think I could have done without it disrupting anybody, and so which encouraged me to walk more. And the nearest Tesla supercharger was only about 60 miles on the road to Faro at Malhada, and we arrived with 28% of charge. Now here there were 20 superchargers and 18 were available, and I think Mark Brown could do a few of these in Manchester and a few other places in the UK and also California. Now the price was only 0.41 of a euro, which is much better than the 57p or more at many of the UK superchargers, so that was good news. As with most of the Tesla superchargers in Portugal, it had a nice cafe, toilets and a hotel, which we made a note of for future reference. A hotel in the same place as a supercharger is ideal for us, and it can only be better if it has a destination charger like the one at Penner Park Hotel, about 50 miles northeast of Porto. We stayed there the day before we arrived at Porto, and it's quite wonderful. You might possibly be paying a bit more, but you can take off the price of charging if they do have a destination charger like they do at the Penner Park. On a long road trip in the UK or Europe, looking for Airbnb after a long day's driving is stressful, so a hotel at a Tesla supercharger in the same place is pretty much perfect. Well, we're at the Malhada in Portugal, the first supercharger of the day. 20 superchargers and only 3 being used. It's good, isn't it?
It's very good. Yeah, and also it always seems to be by a cafe or a hotel or something, so it's really relaxing. You can go in and order a coffee or a cappuccino, so it's nice.
And it's a lot quieter than the motorway services.
Yes.
Mark Brown, who was blogging a few days ago, was in Manchester, and there was queues and trying to queue up, and there was some cars that weren't Teslas taking up 2 spaces. But this is Tesla heaven, you know, 20 stalls, and it's a Saturday.
Yeah.
At almost 11 o'clock, so you kind of think, you reckon Manchester's going to be pretty full right now, I would imagine. And there's 17 stalls here, but of course the shopping isn't quite so good here. So, yeah. And we've just grabbed a coffee, a nice cafe in there.
And we're off to the south of Portugal.
Yeah, heading south, aren't we? Yeah,
Porto.
yeah. Services are fine in the UK, but on a Saturday morning 11, they're just going to be heaving long queues, and here it's really nice. But of course, as more and more people get Teslas, they'll eventually fill up. So we've got enough charge. Oh, we're at 252. We've been about 20-25 minutes, got a coffee, went to the Blues. Now we're kind of ready to go. It says we have enough charge for our next destination, so good. That's good. Next stop is, where is the next stop? It's Alcícia del Sol. Alcícia del Sol. 7
stalls available out of 10.
7 out of 10, 166 miles. So 252 miles in the tank, and so that should get us there.
That's right.
Retire documento. Obrigada e boa viagem.
We were going to stop at the Fatima Tesla supercharger, but didn't need to. We realised we'd have enough charge prediction on the car to go to Alcácer del Sol, the next supercharger, well within our range. It was a few miles off the main road, not as good as the previous Tesla superchargers, but it had most of the chargers available, which is always the main thing. And of course on the Tesla supercharger, and of course if you look at the touchscreen, you can see what's available and what's not, which is always good. And so often, as you know, in the UK, you look and think none are available, there's a queue, oh well, never mind. But most were available. It had a cafe and a shop. Seemed to be very popular with the locals, but we didn't go in. The price here was 0.42 of a euro per kilowatt. Again, much better than UK prices. Up in northern Spain, I hadn't noticed earlier what the prices were. It was actually 0.52 of a euro per kilowatt hour. So it was slightly more than in the Algarve on the west coast, but less than in the UK. A few miles further down the road, we did stop at a nice cafe. It was not a Tesla supercharger, but we wish it was. Conveniently beside the main road, so you didn't have to sort of pull off a couple of miles as with the previous one. The average watts per mile from Porto to Faro was 237, which is much better than from Santander to Porto, but speeds were more like 60 miles an hour and not so much of the 75 miles per hour, the legal limit. And 237 watts per mile is better since having the car and gives a real world range of 210 miles. Okay, the good. The last segment of the trip from Porto down to Faro was 221 watts per mile, giving a real world range of 226 miles. Much better result, and one of the best I've had in the Tesla Model 3. Now the touchscreen fully charged says 255 miles. The Portugal toll roads are fantastic and a pleasure to drive compared with most UK motorways and roads. Long and straight, 2 lanes, not much traffic, and it's hard not to do the 75 miles per hour. And the earlier first stage of our trip from Santander to Porto, I was guilty. And even driving on autopilot cruise control, which I did a lot, I didn't get anywhere near the Tesla range fully charged. Since I've had the Tesla Model 3, the watts per mile are 244 and a range of 204 miles. That's over 12,000 miles. For the total Portugal trip, it's 267 watts per mile and a real world range of 187 miles. But it is improving as the weather gets better, and I don't have that urgency or that first day of having to get to that Airbnb before a certain time because the road was closed. It's far more relaxed now. In the first Portugal video, the cost per mile was 11.5p a mile. But as prices have got cheaper as we've driven down into Portugal, now they're averaging 0.42 of the euro in the Algarve. So the price in the last few days has been 9p a mile over about the last 300 miles, and it's getting better all the time. So currently we're about 10.5p per mile, much cheaper than in the UK because the prices of the superchargers are cheaper. I did try charging my first non-Tesla charger close to our apartment, but that's another video all on its own. There is a Tesla supercharger only 7 miles away, and I drove to it to fully charge. So I gave up charging at the charger close to the apartment in Mayo. Decided to come to a supercharger, fortunately only 6 miles away, near the apartment, and it's Alcantara. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation, probably not. We're down in the Algarve, near Faro. Prices are good here because it's 0.41 of a euro per kilowatt hour, all except from 6 to 9 in the evening when it goes to 0.46 of a euro per kilowatt hour, which is a fair bit cheaper than in the UK, where it's about 57p per kilowatt hour. And this is the first supercharger Tesla I've been to in Portugal that you couldn't get a coffee. You could use the loos. It's at a golf club, very quiet, very peaceful, probably the time of year, probably heaving in August like most places. But there's just 2 cars here, and 6 stalls available. So another nice thing about Portugal. Realising on return the preconditioned battery from charging the short 7 miles away gave me a watts per mile of 180. In the real world, that's 277, much better than the 255 that Tesla say. I wasn't trying, but just keeping to local speed limits in a semi-rural and built-up area. And you can imagine that for taxi drivers, and that was the sort of the roads I was driving on, it's absolutely fantastic. It doesn't like 75 miles an hour, but it loves the slower stop-start city conditions. Tesla superchargers are fantastic, and they've got me from Cornwall to Portsmouth, Santander to North Spain, down to Porto on the west coast, and Faro in Portugal's beautiful Algarve area. But the bad and the ugly is I've tried other chargers in Portugal close to our Airbnb, but it doesn't work, even after paying £20 for a Milo card. So there's no way I could consider this trip except in a Tesla with their supercharger network. Well, I'm sure some of you have managed it, but there is no evidence on YouTube. And the Tesla supercharging was so fast that after a short break for a snack, drink, stretch of the legs, the car had enough charge to get to the next supercharger, and often it was fully charged. So please tell me if you've had a different experience. Have you come to Portugal in a car that wasn't a Tesla? And please tell me what your experience was. When I first got my Tesla, I could see how good the European supercharger network was. And all through Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, Scandinavia. And this type of trip using hotels and Airbnbs was Jen and my preference to getting on a very crowded plane. It seems a very civilized way of traveling. I hope you can like if you did, and please subscribe and hit that notifications bell, and you'll be notified when we post our next Portugal in our Tesla very soon. And I'm going to see if it's possible to charge in Portugal not using the Tesla superchargers. Now I've got my Mio app and £20 deposited with them. I wonder what adventures await us. So what do you think? Please leave a comment below. Don't forget to use your reusable mug wherever you go. Thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye.